about 100 years. We like to say that, and also recognize my colleague from Ohio when I say first in flight. They provided the talent, we provided the terrain. So, you know, we look at in Greensboro, Boom Supersonic plans to manufacture a commercial supersonic airliner that will revolutionize travel. In Concord, not too far away, the city's seeking to replace its manned air traffic control tower with a state-of-the-art remote tower. In Zipline, just a few miles from there, is using unmanned aircraft to deliver healthcare supplies. North Carolina was the first state to complete a bridge inspection using beyond visual line of sight with a drone. Honeywell Aerospace in Charlotte will supply many of the components in advanced air mobility vehicles, and GE Aerospace and Pratt & Whitney are producing next-generation engines at a facility across the state. Now, a common thing I've heard from these companies and many others is that the FAA's regulations are leaving them behind. Despite congressional mandates for the FAA to issue new rules, the agency hasn't issued key regulations that these industries really need for growth. And the delay, it's not just time, but it's got other impacts as well. For example, Honeywell Aerospace has $8 billion in signed contracts for advanced air mobility and UAS platforms waiting on FAA regulations. So, Dr. Miftakhov, again, thank you for being here. And Mr. Gordon, can you speak, we'll go Ms. Miftakhov first, can you speak to how important it is for innovative companies to know the regulatory requirements that they're going to be expected to meet?
Thank you, Senator Butt. And it's, of course, extremely important because we need the certainty of the regulatory environment in order to develop the technology. Now, that's collaboration starts early on, as we're not just showing up to the regulator with the complete system and asking them to look at it. We need interaction long before that, especially with new technologies, to understand how we need to build them in order to substantiate the safety. And that means that on the new technologies, the engagement has to start earlier. We need more resources from the regulators to engage in that, and not just more resources in terms of more headcount, but the right types of resources that do understand these new technologies and how they fit into the aircraft. And of course, you know, that has impact well beyond aviation as well, as we're working on the new fuels. We have a lot of the local impact as well. So you mentioned Southeastern Hub, and we're actually part of this initiative in your state. And it's really exciting to see those developments all around the country that will support this future of aviation. But we do need to have stronger engagement with the regulator early on with the right types of resources.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Senator, but I'll be quick. I think it's important to recognize how complex U.S. airspace is currently without all those new platforms you're talking about. Most jurisdictions just deal with one or two different types of airplanes. We have nearly every airplane flying at nearly every sector, from a huge general aviation platform to the larger planes. And when you combine all of these new platforms that you're talking about that are growing in your state, you're talking about a very, very complex system. That's why the most important thing for this committee, I think, to act on is more funding for the FAA. And I know that's hard to say, more funding for a bureaucracy, but this is a very, very complicated problem, and you need a lot of bright people working on it. They've already got bright minds. They need to exponentially more.
Thank you. Mr. Scribner, in my remaining time, you know, in your testimony, you talked about remote air traffic control towers. In Concord, the regional airport there would like to install a remote tower to safely handle a wide variety of aircraft that operate there. And I share your concern that the FAA's certification approach has contributed to the closure of the remote tower at Leesburg. You mentioned one also in Colorado. Can you speak to the benefits of remote tower systems?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the, and thank you for the question, Senator, in addition to the cost savings that you get, which that's true if you're if you're looking at potentially replacing a conventional tower, or I think even more significantly, if you presently lack a tower at your airport, and there are many particularly rural GA airports where that's the situation. This could provide that added functionality, but it gives, having a mast with sensors that can see better than human beings at night in rain and fog, and then having that display in front of controllers, video feeds stitched together so they can zoom in on particular objects. The benefits are enormous. Even if we're talking about upgrading a conventional tower or replacing a conventional tower with a remote tower, major benefits to remote and digital tower solutions that we're already seeing play out worldwide.
Thank you all. I yield back.
Thank you. We now recognize Senator Klobuchar.
Very good.